From nuclear-capable howitzers to grid-square removal systems, here's every major self-propelled artillery piece that defined Cold War firepower. American self-propelled howitzers. M109 howitzer. The absolute workhorse of American artillery, and honestly, one of the most successful weapon systems ever designed. The M109 mounted a 155mm howitzer on a tracked chassis, providing mobile fire support that could keep pace with armored formations. What made it brilliant was simplicity and reliability. It entered service in 1963 and remains in use today, constantly upgraded. The M109 could fire conventional, nuclear, chemical, or rocket-assisted projectiles out to 18 kilometers, later extended to 30 kilometers with improved ammunition. Thousands were produced, equipping not just the U.S. Army but dozens of allied nations. In any conflict from Vietnam to Desert Storm, the distinctive boxy shape of the M109 was there, delivering steel rain on enemy positions. M110 howitzer. The big brother, mounting a massive 203mm howitzer. The M110 was designed for one purpose, reaching deep into enemy territory with heavy firepower. Its 8-inch shells could demolish fortifications, and it was nuclear capable, able to fire the W-33 nuclear artillery shell up to 30 kilometers. The M110 had no turret, just an open mount at the rear, which meant the crew was exposed. But its range and hitting power were unmatched in the NATO arsenal. In doctrine, M110s would hammer enemy headquarters, supply depots, and reserves, while M109s provided closer support. The M110 served from the 1960s until the 1990s, when precision-guided munitions made its role obsolete. M107 self-propelled gun. Essentially the M110 chassis with a 175mm gun instead of a howitzer. The M107 could reach out to 32 kilometers, providing ultra-long-range fire support. It was most famous in Vietnam, where its range allowed fire bases to support operations across huge areas. The gun was so powerful that firing it literally shook the entire vehicle. Like the M110, the crew was exposed in the open mount. The M107 was eventually phased out in favor of rocket-assisted projectiles for the M110 and M109, which achieved similar ranges with more versatile ammunition options. M108 howitzer. The M109's little brother, mounting a 105mm howitzer. The M108 was designed to support armored cavalry and airborne units that needed lighter, more mobile artillery. It looked nearly identical to the M109, but with a smaller gun. The M108 served in Vietnam and with NATO forces in Europe, but was eventually retired as the M109 took over all medium artillery roles. It proved that sometimes consolidation makes more sense than maintaining multiple similar systems. M44 howitzer. A Korean War design that served into the Cold War, the M44 mounted a 155mm howitzer on an open-topped tracked chassis. It was essentially a stopgap until the M109 arrived, combining WW2-era artillery with modest mobility. The M44 saw service in Vietnam and with various allied nations. It was basic, unprotected, and crude compared to later designs, but it worked and provided mobile firepower when America needed it. Soviet self-propelled howitzers. 2S-1 Gvozdika, the Soviet equivalent to the M109, mounting a 122mm howitzer on a tracked chassis that looked like a stretched BMP. The name means carnation, following the Soviet tradition of flower names for artillery. The 2S-1 was lighter and more mobile than American systems, able to keep pace with mechanized infantry. It was fully amphibious, a Soviet requirement that NATO didn't prioritize. The 2S-1 could fire conventional or chemical rounds, and its relatively lightweight meant it could be airlifted. Thousands were built, serving throughout the Warsaw Pact and exported globally. In Afghanistan, two S-1s provided mobile fire support in mountainous terrain where towed artillery struggled. Two S-3 Akatsiya, the Acacia, a 152mm self-propelled howitzer that was the workhorse of Soviet divisional artillery. Mounted on a modified tank chassis, the 2S-3 was large, heavily armored, and capable of firing nuclear, chemical, or conventional ammunition. Its 152mm shells were devastating, and the system could fire and displace quickly, embodying Soviet shoot-and-scoot doctrine. The 2S-3 equipped motor rifle and tank divisions throughout the Cold War, representing a serious threat to NATO forces. Its combination of mobility, protection, and firepower made it one of the most capable systems of its era. 2S-5 Gyatsint S, a massive 152mm gun, not a howitzer, designed for long-range counter-battery fire and deep strikes. The 2S-5 could reach out to 28 kilometers with standard ammunition, extended to 37 kilometers with rocket-assisted projectiles. It was built on a modified tank chassis and looked menacing with its long barrel. The Gyatsint S was designed to destroy NATO artillery before it could fire, and to hit targets well behind the front lines. Its accuracy and range made it a priority target for Western forces, knowing that silencing these guns was essential to survival. 2S-4 Tilepan, the Tulip, and what a beast. The 2S-4 mounted a 240mm mortar, the largest caliber self-propelled mortar system ever fielded. This wasn't for maneuver warfare, it was for obliterating fortified positions. The 240mm rounds weighed over 130 kilograms and could demolish bunkers, buildings, and anything else in their impact zone. The 2S-4 was relatively rare, issued to specialized heavy artillery brigades. Its purpose was simple. When you absolutely needed something destroyed, you called in the Tulpan. It represented Soviet willingness to build specialized heavy systems for specific missions. 2S-7 Pion, Soviet overkill incarnated. The Pion mounted a 203mm gun on a modified heavy tank chassis, creating one of the largest self-propelled guns ever built. It could fire conventional or nuclear rounds out to 37 kilometers, extended to 47 kilometers with special ammunition. The 2S-7 was designed for devastating long-range strikes against NATO headquarters, logistics centers, and fortifications. When it fired, the recoil was so powerful the vehicle needed a rear spade lowered into the ground for stability. The Pion epitomized Soviet artillery philosophy: more range, bigger shells, overwhelming firepower. 2S-9 Nona, a unique, lightweight 120mm gun mortar system mounted on an airborne chassis. The 2S-9 could fire as a mortar, howitzer, or anti-tank gun, making it incredibly versatile. Designed for Soviet airborne forces, it was light enough to be airdropped and amphibious. The Nona proved that you didn't need a massive system to be effective, just smart design and versatility. It could support paratroopers with close fire support, engage enemy armor with direct fire, and provide indirect fire support. The 2S-9 represented a different Soviet approach: lightweight, multi-role, perfect for rapid deployment forces. European self-propelled howitzers. FV-433 Abbott, Britain's 105mm self-propelled gun designed to support armored formations. The Abbott was compact, reliable, and very British in its engineering. It used the same 105mm gun as British towed artillery, making logistics simpler. The Abbott served on the British Army of the Rhine, ready to support tank divisions against Soviet attacks. It was eventually replaced by the AS-90, but during its service, the Abbott proved that Britain could produce capable self-propelled artillery, even with limited defense budgets. AS-90 Braveheart. Britain's answer to the M109, though it arrived late in the Cold War. The AS-90 mounted a 155mm howitzer with advanced fire control systems and automated loading. It could deliver 6 rounds in less than a minute, then displace before counter-battery fire arrived. The AS-90 represented Britain adopting NATO standard 155mm caliber while incorporating advanced technology. It was powerful, accurate, and designed for the modern battlefield. Panzerhaubitze 2000, Germany's masterpiece, though development extended beyond the Cold War. The concept originated in the 1980s as West Germany sought to replace older American systems with indigenous design. The PZH 2000 featured an automated loading system that could fire 3 rounds in 9 seconds, with all 3 impacting simultaneously using time-on-target calculations. It was incredibly sophisticated, expensive, and represented German engineering excellence. The PZH 2000 proved that European nations could exceed American technology when given time and resources. AMX MKF-3, France's 155mm self-propelled howitzer, mounted on the AMX-13 light tank chassis. Typical of French design, it was lighter and faster than American or Soviet equivalents. The F-3 had an open turret, providing no protection for the crew, but compensated with mobility. French doctrine emphasized rapid fire and displacement, and the F-3 suited this approach. It served with French forces and was exported to several nations, proving French independence in military design. Band Cannon 1, Sweden's remarkable self-propelled howitzer, and probably the most advanced system of the early Cold War. The Band Cannon 1 featured an automatic loading system with a 14-round magazine, unheard of in the 1960s. It could fire those rounds in 45 seconds, delivering devastating firepower before enemy counter-battery could respond. The system was massive, complex, and expensive. Only 56 were built. But it represented Sweden's innovative approach to defense, creating systems that multiplied effectiveness through technology rather than numbers. Self-propelled anti-aircraft artillery. M163 Vulcan Air Defense System. The Vulcan mounted a 6-barrel 20mm Gatling gun on an M113 chassis, creating a mobile anti-aircraft platform. That Vulcan cannon could fire 3,000 rounds per minute, creating a wall of lead that could shred low-flying aircraft. The M163 was designed to protect armored formations from Soviet helicopters and ground attack aircraft. In Vietnam, some were used for ground support, their incredible rate of fire devastating against infantry positions. The M163 represented the last generation of gun-based air defense before missiles took over. M247 Sergeant York, one of the great failures of American defense procurement. The Sergeant York mounted twin 40mm Bofors guns and radar in a tank turret on an M48 chassis. It was supposed to replace the aged M163, but the program was a disaster. The radar couldn't distinguish between targets and ground clutter, reportedly locking onto bathroom fans during tests. After spending billions, the program was canceled in 1985 with 0 operational systems delivered. The Sergeant York became a cautionary tale about rushed development and unrealistic requirements. ZSU-23-4 Shilka, the terror of NATO pilots. The Shilka mounted 4 23mm autocannons with radar fire control, creating a lethal mobile air defense system. Its rate of fire was 3,400 rounds per minute combined, and that quad-gun mount could traverse and elevate faster than aircraft could evade. The Shilka protected Soviet armored columns, shooting down dozens of aircraft in Middle Eastern wars. Even when it missed, pilots would abort attacks to avoid the Shilka's wall of fire. It represented Soviet philosophy, simple, numerous, and deadly effective. ZSU-57-2, an earlier Soviet system mounting twin 57mm autocannons on a tank chassis. The ZSU-57-2 had no radar, relying on optical sighting, But those big 57mm shells could destroy aircraft at longer ranges than smaller calibers. It was less sophisticated than the Shilka, but served throughout the Warsaw Pact. The 57mm guns could also engage ground targets, making it versatile if primitive. The ZSU-57-2 represented transitional technology between WDO-style visual anti-aircraft guns and modern radar-guided systems. Gepard. West Germany's contribution to mobile air defense. The Gepard mounted twin 35mm Oerlikon cannons with sophisticated radar and fire control. It was designed to protect Bundeswehr tank columns from Soviet aircraft and helicopters. The Gepard's electronics were advanced, able to track targets while moving and engage multiple threats rapidly. Germany exported it to several nations, and it remained effective even as missiles replaced guns for most air defense roles. The Gepard showed that gun systems still had value when properly designed. AMX-30, DCA, France's answer to the Gepard, mounting twin 30mm cannons on an AMX-30 tank chassis. The DCA featured radar fire control and was designed to protect French armored divisions. Typical of French design, it emphasized mobility and fire control sophistication. The system could engage both air and ground targets, providing flexibility. While less famous than the Gepard or Shilka, the DCA proved capable and served French forces for decades. Multiple launch rocket systems. M270, MLRs. The grid square removal system. The M270 could fire 12 227mm rockets in less than a minute, saturating an area the size of 6 football fields with submunitions. Each rocket carried 644 M77 bomblets, and a full salvo delivered nearly 8,000 bomblets. The MLRS was terrifying to anyone on the receiving end. Soviet doctrine called for immediately suppressing MLRS batteries because a single launcher could devastate an entire battalion. In Desert Storm, MLRS batteries shattered Iraqi positions, earning the nickname Steel Rain. The M270 could also fire ATAC-MS missiles for precision strikes at 300 kilometers. It represented a revolution in artillery, combining massive firepower with relatively light mobile platforms. BM-21, Grad, the Soviet answer, simpler but no less deadly. The BM-21 mounted 40 tubes of 122mm rockets on a truck chassis, able to fire a full salvo in 20 seconds. The Grad was crude, inaccurate, and absolutely terrifying. Those rockets scattered across a huge area, ideal for attacking troop concentrations, supply depots, and villages. The BM-21 was cheap to build and operate, allowing the Soviets to field them in enormous numbers. Every Soviet motor rifle division had multiple batteries. In Afghanistan and countless other conflicts, the Grad's distinctive whooshing sound preceded devastation. It proved that quantity has a quality all its own. BM-27 Ragen. The Hurricane, mounting 16 tubes of 220mm rockets. The Uragan's rockets were much larger than the Grad's, carrying more powerful warheads or mine dispensers. The system could saturate a 1 square kilometer area with a single salvo, creating minefields or delivering chemical weapons if needed. The BM-27 equipped Soviet Army-level artillery, providing theater-wide fire support. Its range of 35 kilometers meant it could strike deep into NATO rear areas from relative safety. BM-30. Smerch, the Tornado, and it lived up to its name. The Smerch mounted 12 tubes of massive 300mm rockets with 70 to 90 kilometer range. These weren't area weapons. They were designed to destroy specific targets like headquarters, air bases, and logistics centers deep behind enemy lines. Each rocket could carry submunitions, mines, or a single large warhead. The BM-30 arrived late in the Cold War, but represented the ultimate evolution of Soviet rocket artillery. Long range, devastating, and mobile. A single Smerch battery could deliver firepower equivalent to an entire artillery division from previous generations. Lars, Germany's Leichte Artillerie-Raketensystem, mounting 36 tubes of 110 mm rockets on a truck. The Lars was lighter than Soviet systems, designed for rapid fire and displacement. It could saturate an area quickly with high explosive or smoke rounds, then relocate before counter-battery fire arrived. The Lars represented NATO's mobile rocket artillery philosophy: hit hard, move fast, survive to fight again. Type 70, China's multiple rocket system, heavily influenced by Soviet designs but developed independently. The Type 70 mounted 19 tubes of 130 mm rockets and served throughout the Cold War with Chinese forces. It represented China's growing military-industrial capability, able to produce sophisticated weapons systems without Soviet assistance. The Type 70 saw combat in various border conflicts, proving effective if less sophisticated than Western or Soviet equivalents. Nuclear-capable systems. M110A2 nuclear variant. The M110, equipped to fire the W-33 or W-79 nuclear artillery shell. This gave field commanders access to tactical nuclear weapons, able to destroy Soviet tank formations with a single shell. The concept was terrifying. Nuclear weapons deployed to battalion level, ready to stop the Red Army's advance into Germany. Crews trained extensively on firing procedures and fallout patterns, knowing they might have to go nuclear if conventional defenses failed. The nuclear M110 symbolized Cold War brinkmanship, where even artillery could trigger Armageddon. 2S7 Pion nuclear variant, the Soviet equivalent, capable of firing nuclear shells up to 47 kilometers. The Pion's nuclear capability gave Soviet commanders the ability to obliterate NATO strongpoints or break through defensive lines with atomic fire. Like American systems, it brought nuclear weapons to the tactical level, blurring the line between conventional and nuclear war. Soviet doctrine called for early nuclear use if losing, making systems like the Pion incredibly dangerous to everyone. Experimental and specialized systems. XM-2001 Crusader. America's attempt to leapfrog existing technology, though canceled before production. The Crusader would have featured automated loading, advanced fire control, and could fire 10 to 12 rounds per minute. It was designed to outrange and outshoot any threat, but costs spiraled and the program was canceled in 2002. The Crusader represented the end of Cold War thinking, optimized for massive European battles that were no longer relevant in the post-9/11 world. 2S-19 EMSTA-S, a late Cold War Soviet design that entered service just as the USSR collapsed. The MSTA-S mounted a 152 mm howitzer with automated loading and advanced fire control. It could fire 7 to 8 rounds per minute, massive firepower for its time. The 2S-19 represented Soviet artillery reaching technological parity with the West, incorporating lessons from Afghanistan and decades of development. Russia continues to use upgraded MSTA-S systems today. Type 75. Japan's self-propelled howitzer, mounting a 155 mm gun on a unique chassis. Designed for homeland defense, the Type 75 emphasized protection and reliability. Its hydropneumatic suspension allowed rapid emplacement and provided a stable firing platform. The Type 75 represented Japan's return to indigenous military design, creating systems suited to their specific needs rather than importing American equipment. From the reliable M109 to the devastating MLRS, Cold War self-propelled artillery represented the evolution of indirect fire into a decisive arm capable of delivering conventional or nuclear devastation across vast distances, all while remaining mobile enough to survive on the modern battlefield.